mean, what do we do? I mean, just look nowadays. I mean, we import experts from all around the world, all people who are talented from everywhere, from every corner of the world. They are welcome to come to this country. Why? Because we cannot produce enough talent. Regardless of our manual power, workforce. No, we need surgeons, we need dentists, we need scientists, we need what do? We search for talent. Chris? I would like other people to get involved, please.
I was wondering if anyone might be able to comment some more about objectively defining beauty and how that plays into it.
And suffering.
Okay, anybody wants to answer this question? Andy?
I kind of have a little theory for that one.
Yes, please.
I guess it's not perfect, but the closest you could get to objectively defining like a beautiful piece of art is by asking the person who created it and like what their intentions were behind it. And as I say, I know that's not perfect, but it's kind of a bit closer than just like infinite subjectivity. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Just make the point.
That's it, really. Like, if lots of people are looking at a painting, let's say, and having all these different opinions on it, in a sense, the painter could tell them all that they're incorrect because they've not got the message. Although, of course, you could say the painter has finished and stepped away, and it's not really up to the painter what everyone else thinks or how they interpret it. But it's, I think, the closest to like an objective view of it that you could have is the person who created the art. They might have like something objective to say about it. Do you know what I mean?
Okay, I think I have a good answer to that, and Schopenhauer will help me there greatly, as usual when it comes to art. You see, for Schopenhauer, genius has an ability to communicate with ideas. Schopenhauer accepts Plato's world of ideas as the real world, the eternal, essential, unchangeable. This world around us, for Plato, is the world of material existence. Things come to being and then they disappear. They die. So obviously this table cannot be real essence of this, because it's going to disappear one day. So the only essence, the real everlasting entity, can be idea of the table. So Schopenhauer takes Plato's ideas and positions them on the first level of objectification of the will. Will for him is the essence of the world. Now will objectifies itself in everything around us, in material world. But first, will objectifies itself in ideas. Now, an artist, a genius, according to Schopenhauer, has ability to see that idea. He is born like that. You can't just learn how to do that. He's a genius, right? He sees that idea, and then what he does? He replicates that idea in his medium of art. Either that is the painting, or a sculpture, or poetry. Now, as Schopenhauer says, we all have certain amount of genius in us. We have that ability to recognize that idea. And when we happen to do that, we get lost in the experience of aesthetic sensation of beauty. And for that moment or two, a few, we get free because we get away from the will, which is constantly moving us to want more and more and more. And wanting, according to Schopenhauer, is suffering. So the only rare moments of our freedom from the will, from the suffering, are actually when we experience aesthetic sensation of beauty. And this is why we are attracted to art, he says, because we needed rest from suffering, from the will. And this is that objective moment that potentially one can look at it. So, for example, Van Gogh's sunflowers. They're not real sunflowers. You've probably seen them. There are 5, 6 paintings with sunflowers. None of them is real. None of them is real. But why they're so powerful? Because he has tried to match the idea of, according to Schopenhauer, of sunflowers. And now people who look at them, some people say, yeah, it's beautiful, I like the yellow color, and it's like a few sunflowers, yeah, great, Van Gogh, wow. Some people say, well, they're not really real, you know. I can do a photo of them and they can be much better, and they're gonna, people will have different views, but some people will stop there and they're gonna look at it and get lost in that freedom from will, from suffering in a few moments. And this is that aesthetic experience.
Catharsis.
Yes, which for Schopenhauer are extremely important. This is why art is important for Schopenhauer. For that momentary freedom. And again, it's nothing objective. When you say objective, you aim to universal, meaning everybody in the room is going to see it the same.
That's not what objective means.
Yeah.
I mean, if two people look at the same city, the city is objective, but if I ask them what are the facts of the city, two people give me a different list of facts. Yeah, well, there's a Pret, or there's Morrison's, and you ask the other person, is there a Pret? And they say, I didn't see a Pret. If they were looking from two high mountains on two different sides. It's not obvious, and I think the other gentleman said earlier that I believe that beauty is largely objective, but I do believe that the sight, just like blindness or seeing.
How can you explain to me, how do you claim that beauty is objective? From which point of reference?
The property of the object is its form, its ratio, its form, its structure. And what to recognize beauty is to recognize that one is able not only to see the structure and form, but actually to play with the structure and form. In other words, to see more forms in it than one would by habit see.
Would that apply to Picasso, for example?
Correct, because what Picasso did was he forced the audience to not use the habitual form of things, and he forced them to see the beauty, which is to say, it made them responsible for the activity of finding the multiple forms in what he was doing. But he structured the painting objectively so as to provoke that reaction. Now, the reaction is subjective, but the construction of the art does its work through its objective structure. So I would say that beauty, the reaction to beauty is subjective, and one's ability to see and play with those forms comes down to whether one can break the habit of one's thinking.
So would you say that the art itself as being perceived would be subjective, but the artist's creation of the art, his intention, is objective?
The structure of the art is objective.
Not his intention.
I would agree with that because when I create my paintings, I want to achieve an idea, the essence of the idea in that painting. And for me, I have a judgment on that painting when I finish it. Like the gentleman mentioned, if it's the artist that makes that judgment. I do have a judgment, but that judgment is usually confirmed if viewers perceive it. Then I am convinced that my judgment was correct. But if viewers don't perceive it, it doesn't mean that the essence I try to convey is not there. It's just that they can't perceive it.
But it might not be there as well.
It might not be there as well. That is true.
I'm less sure that the intention of the artist is so important. One of the more obvious ones is the artist might not be sure of that. There might be certain things which they're unconscious that's shaping their output. But the other thing is not all artists are conceptual artists. Some artists might be much more intuitive. So for example, in music, for some people, they might be thinking, oh, you know, what I want to achieve this, and this. They might be improvising, something will come to them. And actually when you're in the moment, when you're in the flow, you probably are not thinking consciously at all, you are just in that moment. And so to some extent, at that moment of being in the flow, one is not in a state of intentionality. I'm using that word slightly wrongly, but you get what I'm saying. So I'm rather less sure that the intention of the artist is quite so important. But actually, I quite like what you said. When it's done, you then make a judgment. So if you say improvising musically, in my case, not very good, not very well, but you know, I enjoy the experience of being in the flow. Then perhaps then afterwards you make a judgment. But when you're in the creative, I suppose if one is an intuitive artist, one isn't necessarily being conceptual at the time of producing the art.
I would even say further than that. Sorry, is if I compose something or if I do a painting, most of my painting, for example, is entirely accidental. But what I do is I paint over the canvas over and over and over and over again until it's the accidents I want. So it isn't even unconscious. It's not as if it's some kind of latent unconscious thing. Is that I throw things at a canvas until I like it. And what the reason I keep one canvas rather than another is just an exercise of taste. Now you may say it's subjective, right? And that is true. But I also think that that there are structural properties of that canvas which my taste, my appetite, my lust, my desire triggers. And it is therefore a meeting of what is on the canvas, purely accidentally. This is why intention is quite a difficult one. But purely accidentally, it is why I would keep it rather than something else.
Okay, again, Schopenhauer wants to comment on you.
He's a cantankerous old man, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I add something?
Yes, please, go on.
What the guy said about, I think there is, I think suffering brings such beauty. When you think of composers or artists who suffer, who die